helplessness is your best friend, savage.
Honey, don't you know I'm more than Pac-Man with a bow?
In this episode, we're going to shift the discussion away from plot devices to focus on a pattern in character design and conceptualization, which I've decided to call the Ms. Male character.
At least I'll say this much, at least he's surprising about a video series. I mean, I was expecting, like everybody else, the fighting fuck toy one. But anyway, moving on with the video.
As always, it's important to keep in mind that it's entirely possible to be critical of some aspects of a piece of media while still finding other parts valuable or enjoyable.
Fuck you, I don't need your moral superiority or your permission just to enjoy and live my life in a fashion that you don't like.
Let's begin our examination of this trope by traveling back in time to 1980 and the creation of one of the most famous characters in the history of gaming. Initially called Pac-Man in Japan, the name was later changed to Pac-Man when the game hit arcades in the United States. Incidentally, Toru Iwatani, the creator of Pac-Man, has stated in numerous interviews that the game was designed to appeal to women because, and I'm not kidding about this, he said, "When you think about things women like, you think about fashion, or fortune-telling, or food, or dating boyfriends. So I decided to theme the game around eating. After eating dinner, women like to have dessert."
Okay, that isn't the most sexist thing that a person could have said. It's not like saying that all women like to clean the floor and make their man sandwiches after having sex. And furthermore, doesn't that undermine the fact that she's been saying all this time that, video games from the very beginning of the industry have always been targeted at males, and males only ever play video games?
Luckily, Iwatani's regressive personal or cultural notions about women are not reflected in the finished game itself. Pac-Man went on to become an international sensation and remains one of the most recognizable pop culture icons today. But probably not because women are genetically predisposed to like eating desserts more than humans of other genders.
Yes, and as we all know, female what every single woman likes because you're an idiot. And if you did know what they like, why didn't you go out there and produce your own video games rather than complaining about the past not being up to your exact standards?
Hi, I'm Lily Tomlin. I'm a Pac-Man freak. It's all right. I can talk about it now. Of course, there was a time when I couldn't.
The next year, a group of MIT students created a mod for the original Pac-Man arcade cabinets called Crazy Otto, which featured 4 new mazes and a new male hero with little legs. The idea was to sell this enhancement kit to arcade owners so they could breathe new life into older Pac-Man machines. But because of a separate lawsuit settlement with Atari, they decided to try and sell Crazy Otto directly to Midway, the US manufacturer of Pac-Man cabinets. As luck would have it, Midway was anxious for a follow-up to Pac-Man and worked to transform the mod into an official sequel. In an effort to continue appealing to female gamers,
Yeah, again, completely undermining what she said in the last, Damsel in Distress videos, that all video games were aimed at females at the very beginning up until this very day.
Crazy Otto was briefly changed to Pac-Woman, then to Miss Pac-Man, before finally becoming Ms. Pac-Man. An 11th hour move designed to avoid potential backlash for the third cutscene, which features a child born out of wedlock. The game hit arcades in the United States in 1982 and was an immediate smash hit, becoming the most successful American-made, coin-operated arcade cabinet ever produced. Like her predecessor, Ms. Pac-Man quickly achieved widespread cultural prominence, and it wasn't long before she was turned into a special marshmallow and added to Pac-Man's cereal.
And how is that sexist? All you did was just quote Wikipedia for the last 3 and a bit minutes, and say that Iwatani made a male character, and some people changed it into a female. And how is that sexist?
Pac-Man cereal's got a new surprise. When you look inside, it's shocking. Shocking pink, it's new Miss Pac-Man Marshmallow. She's got a shocking pink bow.
Ms. Pac-Man was not only one of the first playable female characters.
She wasn't the first, she was actually the second female playable character. Ladybug happened to be beat Miss Pac-Man by about 6 months or so.
But she also holds the distinction of being the original Ms. Male character in video games. I describe the Ms. Male character trope as a female version of an already established or default male character. Ms. Male characters are defined primarily by their relationship to their male counterparts.
Yes, because as we all know, having relationships between males and females is the most pressing matter in the world. And honestly, individuals are defined by their own actions, not the relationships between those actions. Although, you gotta admit, in certain video games, there are going to be influences outside of those characters, whether they be female or male.
Via their visual properties, their narrative connection, or occasionally through promotional materials. This trope is of course part of a long tradition in visual storytelling. The process of creating Ms. Male characters out of pre-existing male heroes has been especially popular in animation and comic books over the past century. When the female spin-off is an exact duplicate, she is sometimes referred to as a distaff counterpart. Even though the Ms. Male character did not originate with video games, developers have made generous and frequent use of the trope over the years, especially in games marketed towards young people and general audiences.
It's something that we're going to touch on in the video. All the examples that she gives, all except one of them, are very cartoonish or fantasy-based video games, i.e. anthropomorphic animals, characters that are very out of proportion, or anthropomorphic objects, or inanimate objects, should I say.
It's Mr. Arcade.
And Miss Arcade.
Miss Arcade.
Wow. And so that's Miss Pac-Man.
Into the tunnel.
That couple's in love.
Yeah, with Miss Pac-Man.
Why is she playing a clip of that? Does she have a problem with those two characters individually? Because, I mean, all I can see is
Let's
just a
explore
man
this
and a
trope
woman
in a
being
little more
treated
depth by
roughly
asking
the
a simple
same.
question.
So that means either
How do
she
we
has
know
a
what
problem
gender a particular
of
character
equality,
is?
or people
Other than their
defining
names,
themselves
how do
by
we know
a
that
gender,
the collection of
which
pixels
is
on the right
very
signal
hypocritical,
male,
though,
while those on the
considering
left
she
indicate
calls
female?
herself a feminist and puts on makeup and has those giant hoop earrings that only women seem to have.
Well, in order to differentiate Ms. Pac-Man from her already world-famous counterpart, her creators added a series of stereotypical design elements. With only a few pixels to work with, designers built on top of the original Pac-Man template, adding a red bow,
I think she already knows.
red lipstick, an eye with makeup, long lashes, and a mole as beauty mark. Even though Ms. Pac-Man is essentially a personified shape, in promotional materials she's presented in high heels with long legs, jewelry, and sometimes a feather boa.
Well, thanks for pointing out the fucking obvious. So what's your point? Is it sexist to define a fictional character in a certain gender? I mean, Pac-Man is essentially put an anthropomorphic object, or a shape that only seems to have only one gender defined, that's only defined by a few pixels. And plus, I'd like to point out, they didn't have a lot of power back then. I think, the old arcades were slightly more powerful than, I think was it twice, even handhelds today are 4 times more powerful than the most powerfulest arcade machine back then.
The design elements that were used to transform Pac-Man into Ms. Pac-Man are referred to as feminizing gendered signifiers.
Just like your giant hoop earrings.
The bow, the makeup, the long eyelashes are all specific stylistic choices. They're all part of our culture's visual vocabulary, intended to convey information about gender to the viewer.
Just like you're determining information determined on your gender. You're wearing makeup and eyeliner. You have your hair done up nice, and you're wearing those massive hoop earrings. So if you want to be taken seriously on this message, you quite literally have to remove your earrings.
Game designers use these stereotypical attributes as a sort of shorthand to quickly identify a given character as female. Childlike hair decorations are by far the most frequent accessory used for this purpose. It's standard practice for creators to just put a bow on top of anthropomorphized animals or personified objects.
You mean just like you?
In order to communicate that a character is not male. The Bubble Bobble series stars heroes Bub and Bob, who are charged with rescuing their female counterparts and respective love interests Peb and Pab. Lala is a feminized version of the male hero Lolo in the Adventures of Lolo series.
I'm gonna save my girlfriend!
No, he's not.
Mimi fills this role as the main protagonist's girlfriend in the Super Monkey Ball games. In Disney's popular Where's My Water mobile games, we know that Allie is female because she's the only alligator who wears a bow. The Adult Swim game Giant Boulder of Death takes the trope to ridiculous extremes by gendering a pink boulder with a giant pink bow before she's stuffed in the refrigerator to motivate the blue boulder to seek revenge.
What?
It's an inanimate fucking object.
You're an inanimate fucking object!
Now, the interesting thing is that these gendered signifiers are really quite arbitrary and abstract. There's nothing about a bow in and of itself that's intrinsically or essentially feminine. It's just a piece of colored fabric, after all. But our society currently assigns a very specific, socially constructed, and strictly enforced meaning to that piece of fabric.
How is it enforced? Are the police gonna come and beat me up? Or put me in jail just for wearing a bow? No, all that would probably happen is I'll probably get some minor attention thrown my way. Good or bad, depending on what my view on attention being. But honestly, right now, considering how the UK weather is, I honestly wouldn't wear a bow. Mainly because it would come back soaking wet. Mainly because half the UK is flooded right now.
It's a symbol that conveys the concept of female, and invokes the idea of girlhood. The indie game Rogue Legacy has an interesting system whereby you can be randomly assigned the choice of either male or female heirs to play on each run. The characters are essentially identical both mechanically and aesthetically, except for a very minor difference in their breastplate styles. So far, so good. But all the female heirs also have a strangely conspicuous and completely unnecessary lavender-colored bow on top of their armor.
Well, thanks for showing me where the bow is. I wouldn't have guessed, considering you think the general audience of Anita Sarkeesian are either people who hate her, or people who are too stupid enough to think to themselves.
This is a classic example of put a bow on it. The color coding of characters is another frequently used visual element to signify gender. Typically, the dominant color used in the design of the female variant is bright pink, although sometimes a purple or pastel palette may be used. In the 1985 NES classic Ice Climber, player 1 controls Popo, who wears a blue parka. If you have a second player, they can control Nana, who wears a pink parka.
That isn't pink, it's bright, it's red, and actually the first time I ever played Ice Climbers, I just thought they were both male. Mainly because their names were kind of foreign and I didn't understand what their gender was. Mainly because of limited graphics.
Amy Rose was designed to be a pink female version of Sonic, especially in her early incarnations. Command Girl Video is the female version of Commander Video in the Bit Trip Runner indie game series. Her dominant color is purple, she sports a giant bow on her head, and in Runner 2, she is suddenly and conspicuously busty.
Kinky.
The most commonly used gendered signifiers, or feminizing accessories, are bows, lipstick, long eyelashes, and the color pink. But there are a whole host of other design elements that, in combination, serve the same purpose. Other signifiers used to differentiate women from men are pigtails, high-heeled shoes, painted nails, pronounced makeup, especially blush and eyeshadow, pronounced makeup, especially blush and eyeshadow, pronounced makeup, especially blush and eyeshadow.
Play that clip just one more time if you don't guess what I'm trying to get at with it.
Pronounced makeup, especially blush and eyeshadow.
You disgusting, hypocritical, douchebag, motherfucker, idiot, asshole, dickhead. She's wearing makeup in this video right now. She might as well put up a big sign right behind her saying, "I am a stupid hypocrite." Because that's the only two ways that I consider this video. Either she isn't aware of what she's saying, that means she's a complete idiot, or she's fully aware, which makes her a complete hypocrite. Or maybe she's a stupid hypocrite. But anyway, the point is that this video is completely hypocritical of her. She constantly complains about how women shouldn't be handled this way, and yet she does it all herself. Face it, the only way she could be even more hypocritical is if she complained about how women are being violent, how violence is bad, and then endorse a story where she killed somebody. But as we all know, Anita Sarkeesian wouldn't do that.
midriff-bearing outfits, exaggerated breasts with exposed cleavage, and a heart motif in their design or powers.
Outside of calling Anita Sarkeesian a hypocrite and a retard, which he is being a retarded hypocrite, let's go one step beyond that. Let's see if we can judge her character that she made for the last video, her Legend of the Last Princess, and see if it holds up to her standards. We can clearly see here she has a ponytail, which is something that's closely assimilated to femininity, or women mostly have ponytails. In fact, Anita Sarkeesian has often been spotted using a ponytail. We occasionally see her wearing hoop earrings, like Anita Sarkeesian. In fact, this is very self-insertion fanfiction when I think about it. She has been... I did remember a couple of times seeing this character with eyeliner on, so that's a number of hypocritical statements to say that this character is glorious and nice when it kind of falls into her gender stereotypes.
Pretty Bomber is the protagonist's adversary and sometimes love interest in the Bomberman series. And just to make absolutely clear, there is no confusion about her gender, she's decked out in pink, has a giant heart attached to her head, and also throws heart-shaped bombs.
Oh no, it's gender oppression. We have to stop this immediately because Bomberman is somehow secretly keeping women down.
Gendered signifiers are not mandatory for the Ms. Male character trope to be in effect, but these types of stereotypical attributes do serve to mark female characters as decidedly different by virtue of their feminine presentation.
Just like you constantly complain about this being a gender signifier, but yet you've used it your fucking self, you fucking hypocrite.
Now, just to be clear, there's no inherent problem with the color pink, makeup, bows, or high heels as design elements on their own. And of course, people of all genders may choose to wear any of them from time to time in the real world, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that either.
Make up your fucking mind then. It's either a problem or isn't a problem. Jesus Christ. You know what? Either make your decision. It's either going to be a huge problem or none at all. I personally don't think this is a problem in the slightest. All it is just Anita Sarkeesian talking because she likes the sound of her own voice.
However, when designers choose to use the Ms. Male character trope and its associated visual stereotypes to specifically distinguish female characters from the rest of the cast in a fictional context, it has a few negative consequences.
How? You've openly admitted that it's a fictional narrative. It has no consequences outside the however long I choose to play said game for.
One repercussion of constantly relying on feminizing signifiers for character design is that it tends to reinforce a strict binary form of gender expression. The gender binary is an entirely artificial and socially constructed division of male and female into two distinctly separate and opposing classes of human being.
Yeah, but there are key differences between men and women. Some of these are purely psychology and sociology, and others are down to sexual dimorphism. You know, i.e. men are stronger, women tend to be weaker, women can give birth, so on and so forth.
The gender binary also erases the continuum of gender presentations and identities that fall outside of the rigid masculine-feminine false dichotomy. And within that strict binary, women are marked, while men get to remain largely unmarked. In the Mario franchise, the Koopalings were originally described as Bowser's 7 children. All of them are male except for one named Wendy O. Koopa. We know she's female because her designers use practically every hyper-feminine frill and accessory available to separate her from her male siblings. Wendy's 6 brothers, by contrast, are unmarked by gendered identifiers, which means they get to be presented in a variety of creative ways. Ludwig's design communicates intelligence and arrogance, while Lemmy's reveals his playfulness, and Iggy's makes him seem maniacal and a little unbalanced.
A man after my own heart.
Sadly, Wendy's identity is limited by the fact that she's covered in superficial gendered signifiers. One look at her and you know she's female, but not much else.
The truth is the same with the other 7 characters in them. Because all you ever do is meet up with them, beat them in a boss battle and move on. There's very little to know about them. There's no cutscenes between them. There's no dialogue between them in battle. There's no dialogue in any cutscenes between them. Basically, these characters are very blank.
As with many Ms. Male characters, her defining characteristic is her gender. Wendy also suffers from a parallel condition I like to call personality female syndrome.
This is gonna get really stupid really quickly, isn't it?
Wherein female characters are reduced to a one-dimensional personality type consisting of nothing more than a collection of shallow stereotypes about women.
Now that is irony!
She's vain, spoiled, bratty, and quick to anger.
Now that is irony!
I don't care! I want America for my birthday! I want it!
Why am I having weird images of Anita Sarkeesian's early years?
When female characters are marked by obligatory stereotypical identifiers, it actively limits the range of available options by enforcing a narrow, restrictive, and monolithic model for the portrayal of femininity.
I'd like to point out all she's showing is games aimed at very young children. I very doubt they're going to have deep, methodical plots that have existentialism weaved in them throughout the entire game. No, because they're aimed at, more simpler minds. Not wish to insult any children watching this. No, why the fuck would you be watching this? I swear and show borderline nudity in my videos. So you have very irresponsible parents if you're letting your kids watch this video.
Meanwhile, since male characters are allowed to be unmarked, it permits a much wider array of possibilities for their designs. I should note that even though pink and purple are strong gendered indicators when combined with other feminizing visual markers, those colors are not the exclusive domain of women. An expanded color palette is something we do see applied to men on rare occasions, as with Kirby, Bomberman, or Roy Koopa, but they are the exception to the rule and are typically only found in colorful, childlike, and extremely male-dominated worlds. But if a bow, lipstick, eyeshadow, or heels are placed on an otherwise male-identified character,
I'd like to point out Mr. Slave here was actually cut from the original version of Final Fight. You can only play him in the Japanese version, mainly because it was considered too controversial at the time. Honestly, nowadays we have South Park making the exact same joke about it.
the intention, or at least the result, is typically a homophobic or transphobic joke.
I would like to point out Hyper Kadal isn't a reference to homosexuality. It's actually a reference to geisha, or Japanese geishas. If you recall, Japanese geishas were actually at one time all male when they were dancers. That's what it's a reference to, not a stab at homosexuality or transgenders.
Hey, yo!
Fight!
There are a few optional design accessories for men like neckties or baseball caps, but they don't hold the same significance. They're not ubiquitous or strictly enforced, and they're never really used to mark men as not female in larger fictional universes dominated by women.
I'd like to point out in MLP they actually do have to mark certain characters as male, like Big Macintosh and a couple of others. So that's undermined to a point.
Maxwell is the hero of the popular Scribblenauts series. In the fourth game, Scribblenauts Unlimited, we're introduced to his twin sister Lily, who's basically a feminized copy of Maxwell. The two are identical except for a series of gendered signifiers designed to mark her as female.
I'd like to point out one thing. When she announced this, the Wii U hadn't even been announced. It's taken us so long that Nintendo has released a console on a new completely console generation right now. But anyway, beside the point, that, so what? She wears a couple of pink outfits. Oh no, this is oppressing women everywhere. Honestly, if you're easily oppressed by the fact that there are certain characters wearing certain colours, I'd like to tell you to grow the fuck up.
In the game, we learn that Lily is one of 42 children.
You must love your wife a lot.
All 41 of the other siblings are male, and all have some trait or interest associated with their name that serves to define their personality. There's Artie the artist, Buzz the astronaut, Glum the emo rocker, and so on and so forth.
Yet again, how is this harmful? All you're mentioning is fucking obvious. Jesus Christ, this might be the most stupidest things Anita Sarkeesian has ever said in the history of the universe.
And all are unlockable and playable during the course of the game. By contrast, Lily's personality trait is essentially being Maxwell's twin. She has no associated interest or hobby other than being the female version of the game's hero. In addition to being a Ms. Male character, Lily is also a particularly pronounced example of another related trope called the Smurfette principle.
She's pretty much going to be repeating herself from an older video, so pretty much while she's talking about that, I'm going to just quickly scroll on some movies she could have easily funded with the money that she raised from her Kickstarter.
The term was coined back in 1991 by feminist author Katha Pollitt, and is of course named after the only female Smurf in Smurfville. The Smurfette principle is the tendency for a piece of media to include only one woman in an ensemble of male characters. The trope is a pervasive problem in video games, manifesting as the token chick in any given grouping of heroes, villains, or non-playable characters. An exceptionally stark example of the trope can be found in the original Mega Man series. Over the course of 10 games, there are 78 bosses or robot masters, and exactly one of them is female, Splash Woman, who appears in the 9th game.
First of all, these are gynoids, so they're not even human, and I bet you anything, if there was a 50-50 split, she'd be probably complaining about the fact that you could do violence against women, or in this case, gynoids, because that's the technical phrase for them. Because they're not androids. Androids are supposed to look like males, and gynoids look like females.
In the Wii U game The Wonderful 101, 6 of the 7 color-coded playable heroes are men. The one exception is, of course, the pink hero named Wonder Pink. In addition to her Smurfette status, she's also afflicted with personality female syndrome.
I got in late last night, but there was this party, and then the after party, and then the after party. I needed a major powder break to freshen up before meeting you guys.
Am I the only person thinking of Paris Hilton right now?
All these hicks my boobs. You should have seen the look on their faces, stupid redneck idiot.
Wonder Pink is shallow, vain, materialistic, and flies into a rage at the drop of a hat.
Now that is irony!
You can find Smurfettes in just about every genre, from dungeon crawlers to racing games, from RPGs to shooters. Pollitt sums up the crux of the Smurfette problem nicely in her New York Times article. The message is clear. Boys are the norm, girls the variation. Boys are central, girls peripheral. Boys are individuals, girls types. Boys define the group, its story, and its code of values. Girls exist only in relation to boys. With that in mind, let's come back to Ms. Pac-Man for a moment. One of the core consequences of the Ms. Male character trope is that it helps to define women by their connection to men.
That's rich coming from Jonathan McIntosh's plaything. Honestly, you might as well admit that you're Jonathan McIntosh's hand puppet the way you constantly say men and women and all that fucking shit.
So despite her tagline, more than Pac-Man with a bow,
Honey, don't you know I'm more than Pac-Man with a bow?
Ms. Pac-Man's visual properties are simply an extension of Pac-Man's original design. She actually kind of is just Pac-Man with a bow.
Really? I think she already knows.
Her simple narrative reinforces the fact that she really only exists in relationship to Pac-Man. She's both his love interest and also the mother of his child. Dixie Kong is the female variant and love interest of Diddy Kong.
So, Dix, what do you say we skip the action-adventure platforming and get it on like Diddy Kong?
You do know we're, like, related, right?
That's even better!
Note the ponytail and hair ringlets, pink shirt, pink hat, earrings, and eyelashes, all to distinguish her from her predecessor.
Jesus Christ, do you even hear yourself talk at times? Honestly, the only way she could be a bigger hypocrite is if she said that sexual objectification is wrong while giving while doing pole dancing. Because honestly, she's wearing all this shit right now. Jesus Christ, the only people who are supporting her right now are fucking morons and people who are only latching on this because they think they can get cheaper attention out of it. Just like me, then.
Essentially, Ms. Male characters are feminized imitations or derivative copies of already established male characters. They exist only because of and in relationship to their male counterparts. Ms. Male characters typically aren't given their own distinctive identities and are prevented from being fully realized characters who exist on their own terms.
Too much stupid to comment on. It's like there's huge towers of stupidity being raised up and it's difficult for me to comment on each one without two monumental towers of stupidity being raised up right before me. Jesus Christ, I feel stupid if you're even watching this video. I'm going to need a stern drink. In fact, I'm going to be doing shots right now. So get yourself a bottle of vodka right now. I'm going to get completely shit-faced during this video.
This has the perhaps unintended effect of devaluing these characters and often relegating them to subordinate or secondary status inside their respective media franchises, even when they are on rare occasion given a starring role in a spin-off or sequel. One very old and notable example of the Ms. Male character trope comes to mind. As the story goes, God made Adam in his own image and then later took a rib from Adam's side and fashioned a woman out of it to be his wife and companion.
Honestly, what's this got to do with video games? And honestly, the way I stood Genesis, or the original book on Genesis, I thought Adam and Eve were made at the same time. Not later after.
This Adam and Eve version of the creation myth reinforces a subordinate view of women. Man is cast as the original concept and source code for woman, who is derived from his body. Essentially, Eve is the sequel to Adam, just as Ms. Pac-Man was built from the body of Pac-Man who came before her. In a male-identified society like ours, men are associated and become synonymous with human beings in general.
No shit! Jesus Christ, you'd think the way that Nina Sarkeesian talked down to her audience, I'm actually surprised she has any followers to begin with. Because all she might as well be doing is going, "You're stupid! You're stupid!" Because I'm Anita Sarkeesian, that makes me more intelligent, because you're all stupid. Jesus Christ. Where's that? I need another shot.
In other words, male tends to be seen as the default for the entire species.
That's because originally when the word man was created back in probably the early BCs, we were all men. You know, it was a non-generic phrase. It meant men. It could have meant men or women. It wasn't until around about some time later, like in, I think was it, I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head, but my old English teacher told me about this. But basically, it wasn't until the word wife was put on the front of it to make wifeman. It's where we get the word woman and the word wife from. And now you know where the word man comes from. Because we were all men at one point, including women. So that pretty much undermines Anita Sarkeesian's point that you know, men was a non-generic phrase.
In video games, male identification manifests as a tendency for all characters to be male by default, unless there's some special reason or specific justification for women to be present in the story. To help illustrate one of the ways the male as default phenomenon operates in gaming worlds, let's take a look at the mobile mega hit Angry Birds. When the game was first released in 2009, the 5 original birds in the flock were identified by their color and did not include any specific gendered signifiers.
Apart from the white one, because she lays eggs.
Over time, as the game has grown in popularity and the brand has expanded to include numerous spin-offs, real-world merchandise, and a weekly cartoon series, the birds have been given more distinct personalities and actual names. Mobile developer Rovio first began gendering birds in February 2011 with the release of their Valentine's-themed episode for Angry Birds Seasons, which includes Ms. Male character versions of the red bird, the white bird, and a female pig as love interests. Note the bows, makeup, and long eyelashes.
Yes, because as we all know, long eyelashes are somehow oppressing women.
There's a larger unintended consequence to marking these birds as female with feminizing gendered signifiers. It reinforces that all the other birds and pigs without these specific visual cues are all male by default unless otherwise noted. The addition of the pink bird to the main flock in 2012 further entrenched male as the default setting for the Angry Birds universe.
How is this a fucking problem?
I should mention that Rovio later stated that the white bird was also female and named her Matilda. This revelation led to a character redesign which has feminized the white bird by adding pink accents, rose cheeks, and long eyelashes in the Angry Birds cartoon series, just to make absolutely clear that she is female.
I already knew she was female because she lays fucking eggs.
Over in the Mushroom Kingdom, we have Toadette, who is both a Ms. Male character and the only woman among the mushroom people.
That does it. I'm doing another shot now. Hopefully this will make more sense if I get more drunk and probably on the same intelligence level as Anita Sarkeesian.
Her introduction to the Mario spin-off games emphasizes the fact that all the other Toads in the entire species are male. Both the Smurfette principle and the Ms. Male character tropes create scenarios that reinforce a false dichotomy, wherein male is associated with the norm, while female is associated with a deviation from the norm. Everything we've discussed in this episode...
You haven't been discussing anything. A discussion has to have multiple points of view. All you've been doing is lecturing people on how you don't like how certain things are turning out in society. You don't get to decide how people develop game characters that you don't like. The best you can do is just buy the games that interest you. Because honestly, that's all you can really do. Or better yet, you go one step beyond and you can create your own video games. Heck, video game creation isn't that hard. There are already pre-made tools that can make this job easier. In fact, Hotline Miami was made by a grand total of 2 people. And that game kicked so much ass that it was fucking awesome.
So thus far has been related to visual design or narrative connection. But there's another way that the Ms. Male character trope can manifest itself, and that is through marketing and promotional materials. A great illustration of this trend can be found in BioWare's highly regarded Mass Effect series. The games offer players a choice between a male or female version of the protagonist, Commander Shepard, each with a range of cosmetic customizable options. The female option is well designed, and her overall narrative is nearly indistinguishable from her male counterparts, aside from some of the romance options.
There you go, there's your problem. You can give people the option to choose gender, and hopefully they'll choose the gender that they want to see. There, problem solved.
However, if we take a step back from the game experience itself and look at the marketing campaigns for the trilogy, we see that the female variant of Shepard is practically non-existent. In mainstream advertising of the franchise, the male commander is used almost exclusively. His image is front and center on the box covers for all releases, including the special editions.
You know what, Mom? You know what I'm going to get you next Christmas? A big wooden cross. So every time you feel unappreciated for all your sacrifices, you can climb on up and nail yourself to it.
He's the one featured in the TV commercials, teasers, trailers, web banners, street posters, and print ads, and his face appears on most of the magazine covers. All of this positions the male Commander Shepard as the default protagonist of the series.
One man, one very specific man, might be all that stands between humanity and the greatest threat of our brief existence.
That is how BioWare is selling the Mass Effect experience.
It's BioWare's franchise. They can sell it however the fuck they want to. They could sell it as a pornographic experience if they choose to.
Nearly everything about the advertising campaign explicitly tells players that Commander Shepard is a man, and by extension associates the official storyline with the male version of the hero. This marketing strategy contributes to the fact that only 18 to 20% of players choose the female option.
Just for full disclosure, I actually did choose a female Shepard, not because of gender signifiers or because of the showing my upstart to the patriarchy, but because I generally switched the gender of the previous game that I was playing as, and the previous game I played as before this was Fallout 3, where I played a male dude, if I recall, and I pretty much just alternate between the genders. In fact, the last game that allowed me to choose my gender, I was it was Skyrim and I was a female who, guess what I called my character? I named my character Lisa Ann after the porn star, so it's kind of funny when I saw wanted notices with the word Lisa Ann written on it.
Despite the fact that Jennifer Hale's voice acting is widely praised as being far superior.
You brought me here to confirm what you already know. The Reapers are here.
Still, the female version has a dedicated fan base who frequently refers to her as FemShep. And although this is meant as an affectionate nickname, it does further highlight her designation as a Ms. Male character.
Honestly, she is probably so stupid that not even calling her stupid wouldn't register with her. She'd probably accuse me of being sexist. But anyway, Anita Sarkeesian herself has denounced herself as a feminist, as a woman, as somehow representing all women and all things everywhere, which is somehow virtually impossible. You don't know how all women are going to respond to everything. But anyway, this is purely hypocritical of her, denouncing other people as representing female shepherds as female when she calls herself a feminist or as a woman.
She is the one with the qualifier attached to her name. She is a female shepherd, whereas the male version simply gets to be shepherd.
I've occasionally referred to male shepherd as male shepherd and female shepherd as this random shepherd. Honestly, I have no idea what she's talking about right now, but anyway, moving on with this video. I'm getting way too drunk right now, so right now I'm just rambling.
During the advertising of Mass Effect 3, BioWare made a little more effort to include female shepherd with items like an alternative reversible slipcover for the game box, which features the male version by default, as well as a special web-only trailer, but these gestures feel like an afterthought or niche specialty marketing, and hardly what I would call a substantial or equitable inclusion. While Mass Effect's advertising strategy might not undermine the story or gameplay, it is a glaring example of how the Ms. Male character trope can be perpetuated by marketing departments unless careful consideration is given to how gender is represented when advertising games that do offer players a choice.
Yes, because as we all know, it's all about being careful about how you portray your female characters. Honestly, why doesn't Anita Sarkeesian just make her own video games? I know I've repeated this several times. I've never heard of a person who's given me a legit reason why she just doesn't go out there and market her own video games how she wants to, which honestly would actually gain respect from me. But honestly, I couldn't have any more less respect for Anita Sarkeesian apart from if she started doing criminal activity. In fact, I have more respect for Christian Westerland Chandler, the guy who made Sonichu, one of the worst webcomics I've ever read, than I do for Anita Sarkeesian.
Now, it's certainly true that in many cases, the games starring the female variant are better gaming experiences overall. And taken on their own, each individual example we've covered in this episode might seem relatively benign or trivial.
Which it fucking is.
But the reason this series focuses on tropes is because they help us recognize larger recurring patterns. Both the Ms. Male character and the Smurfette principle have been normalized in gaming and in mass media more broadly. So much so that the two tropes usually pass under the radar and are often reproduced unconsciously, which is part of what makes the myths they perpetuate about women so powerful and insidious in our culture. The truth of the matter is that there's really no need to define women as derivative copies of men or to automatically resort to lazy, stereotypical, or limiting gendered signifiers when designing video game characters.
It was at that moment that Claire realized she had superpowers!
Claire is a simple blue cube, and one of the more memorable characters from the indie game Thomas Was Alone.
Honestly, the only gender signifier that Claire has from Thomas Was Alone is her name. You could have easily named her John Jackson Jimomo, and you would have probably remembered her just as well. I have actually played Thomas Was Alone. I think I played it in less than 3 hours or so. In fact, I think it was the main reason why I didn't start my 1996 mode on Bioshock Infinite. Which honestly, I only recently just finished playing for the DLC of that game.
We know she's female because of her name, her narrative, and the pronouns used during gameplay. Claire's gender presentation doesn't reduce her to her gender or separate her from the rest of the cast.
Claire needed to come up with a superhero name as soon as possible.
Half of the playable characters in Towerfall are women, and the game is also notable for its color code inversion. The Last of the Order wears blue, while the Assassin Prince is decked out in pink. Indie games like Knit Underground.
I played Knit Underground and I thought it was completely shit-tastical.
Scary Girl, It'll Do, and the iOS title Lily all have female characters who resist gendered stereotypes. Each of these indie games avoids falling back on the Ms. Male character trope or relying on narrow, superficial visual markers as a stand-in for personality. The visual aesthetics of these female characters displays a range of gender expression and presentation using a variety of hairstyles, color choices, and accessories.
It's all a matter of perspective and content and how you choose to view something. All of what you just said during this entire video was just pointing out, oh, it's wrong for women to wear pink, or wear bows, or wear high heels, or wear earrings, which I think I've seen more videos of you wearing high heels, earrings, and wearing makeup, so that's completely hypocritical of you. In fact, the only way I would actually take you seriously on this point, if next time I see you wearing a bag on your head. But anyway, moving on with this video.
Developers can also choose to give players the opportunity to get to know the personalities, interests, and struggles of their characters. Even with minimal narrative or limited graphics, it is entirely possible to make games that feature dynamic women who exist on their own terms.
Which game developer have been doing it before you open your pie hole? You fucking idiot, you fucking moron, you fucking hypocrite, you fucking piece of vile, disgusting, moral pig, idiot, fart, fuckface, douchebag, moron, cunt, asshole, dickhead, piece of shit, piece of garbage, fondler of baby monkeys, drinker of splooge, the fondler of baby squirrels, and all the other nasty things I can think of right now because I'm way too drunk to think straight. Anyway, I've been fine and thanks for watching. I'm gonna go rest now. I'm way too fucking drunk to think straight.